I'm going to die someday, but not right now. It may. I will see what happens. All right. So we have Mark 11, 12 to 25. Just to set the stage, Jesus has already come into town. This is Passover. That means that people from all over has come into Jerusalem for Passover. Every Jew that there was, every generation that was still living, it was always a thing that life savings was spent to get to Jerusalem. It was a bucket list thing to get to Jerusalem during Passover, because this was the thing that you always heard about. Every time you went to the synagogue, you heard about this. You heard about what this was all about, what the temple was all about, what the sacrifices were all about. You knew that this was the thing to do. So you dreamt about doing this as a little boy or a little girl. And so these people came, thousands and thousands of people came. So when Jesus comes in on a donkey, they saw this as a prophetic thing, and they all had palms, and they're shouting hallelujah and glory be to God and all those things. And as he's coming in, he then eventually he goes and he stops at the temple and he looks around, and then he leaves and goes up to Bethany. Because every time he was in this area, he always went to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' house. You know, Lazarus, the one that he raised from the dead. These were his confidants. These were his friends. Just like disciples, they were his friends. And so he would always go there. But as he was going back, he was hungry. And he went by, he saw, and right in the out in the field, he saw a fig tree. We're going to talk about that fig tree, because he thought that there was figs on that tree. But as that is the backstory, I want you to understand now, as an introduction, is that how do you feel about God? Do you feel that he is one that cares about everything about you? When you wake up, what you eat, what you sleep, how you sleep, do you think he cares about if you're playing sports or not playing sports? Do you think he cares about those things that you spend your money on, those things that you do inside the house? Do you think he cares about any of this stuff? Do you think about what you eat or don't eat, or drink or don't drink? Do you think he cares about any of this stuff? You see, there was historically, in the old age, people would create gods, and they would create these gods with the idea that these gods were there for us. They didn't care about us. They didn't care about anything that we did, but yet they created these gods for a specific thing. They would sacrifice things based on what they needed. Crops, children, having children because they were barren, or protection or prosperity. Sometimes they even sacrificed their children. If the ask was big enough, the sacrifice was just as big as the ask. So the world view of religion was, I will do this act. And because I'm going to do this act, that is then going to force or cause that God to compromise and give me what I want. Today, atheists have even the most famous atheists have said that God, if there was a God, he would be so untouchable that he didn't care about what you did. So how do you feel about God? Jesus, even in the Old Testament, God goes to Abraham and he shows that he wants a relationship with him. Going back before Abraham and Enoch and Adam and all those others, he came and wanted a relationship with them. He cared about everything that they did. He showed them how to do things. And when they put all their trust into God, things happen. It happened supernaturally, that they didn't have to ask for it. But even if they did ask for it, their faith was enough that God listened, and he even stopped some of what he wanted to punish. When he wanted to punish Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham said, wait, if we find 5 people, will you still do this? Wait, if you find 2 people, will you do this? And God says, if you find these people, then we will save Sodom and Gomorrah. See, the relationship that they had was one in such that they listened to each other. Yes, God was still God, but he was on a personal level with these people. So he cared about everything that they did. So the story today is going to be about this relationship. The figs and the temple, everything that we're going to be talking about today has to do with our relationship with God. Understanding the importance of our relationship with him. So let's read the text, and starting in verse 12. Now the next day, when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing from afar a fig tree, having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he could find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season of figs. In response, Jesus said to it, let no one eat of this fruit from you ever again. And his disciples heard it. I need you to, if you're taking notes, I want you to put a star next to verse 14. Then in 15, so they came to Jerusalem. Then Jerusalem went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught, saying to them, is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a den of thieves. This is another verse that I want you to put a star next to. It's an underlined den of thieves. Now in the morning, as they passed by, they say they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter remembered, said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away. I want to begin with the fig tree. You see, he's approaching this and he sees this fig tree, and understand that there's foliage all over the fig tree. So when he sees this big bush of tree, he believes that this tree is full of figs. Because the way the fig tree grows is that when it's in spring, there is a bud. This bud is edible. The bud is going to turn into a fig, but the buds are what comes first. So these buds come first. They start to turn into figs, and then the leaves start to come out. So therefore, if there's leaves all over the fig tree, that would mean that there are figs on the tree. So there would be something wrong if you see a tree full of leaves. Because the first thing you would do, knowing the nature of the fig tree, that there should be something edible on that tree, whether it's the buds or the actual fig. And because it was spring, and he says in Mark that it was not the season of figs, the buds should still be there before the leaves. Okay? So when you see this, the idea of understanding this is that Jesus in the Old Testament have identified that Israel and the temple is like a fig tree. This fig tree is that the goal for the fig tree is to understand when I see leaves, I see there's fruit. So if there's no fruit in the leaves, I am one who is imitating a real fig tree. That means I'm a fraud. I look like a child of God. I look like the temple. I look like Israel. I look like this person, but yet when you really get close enough to me, you're going to see that the message that I have in my character has nothing to do with the fruits of the Spirit. Nothing. So we see this, we identify this, we look at the way the church is today and the way Israel was. And I want to talk about the temple in a second. But when you look at Israel, Israel was identified as a special people. But these special people was not so that they could be first in line. It was for them to present the truth about God to every single individual that God created. Not ethnic groups, not racial, none of this stuff, but not culture. It transcended all of that. Israel, the design of Israel was to bring the gospel or God to everybody. But they took it and they created something different. They created a religion. They created a religion that was only designed for Jewish people. See, God cursed this because when he looks at this fig tree and he looks at Israel, he saw a bunch of flowers. He saw the pomp and circumstance of the religion, but there was nothing coming out of the religion that resembled God. Nothing. Let's take a look at the temple. The temple was designed for Moses to go in the tabernacle, the tent of the tabernacle, to go in and commune with God. You have the sacrifice on the brazen altar. You then had the laver where you were cleansed. And then you walk into the holy tent. And then in the holy tent, you would recognize that there was the Son of God, the Lamb of God, to sacrifice so that I could then enter into the Holy of Holies. These priests would go in once a year. When you move from the tabernacle to the Solomon's temple, they would tie a rope on the priest so that when he took the blood of the bull and goats or whatever into the Holy of Holies, if he didn't do what he was supposed to do, through prayer, through cleansing, or something in his life was screwed up, he would walk into the Holy of Holies, which means the presence of God, and his sins would be before him. He would drop dead like that. So they would tie the rope around his waist so that they could pull him out if he dropped. The goal of the tabernacle or the temple was so that we could present God. We could have a place to show that this was heaven on earth. That the presence of God is real. He is not far off. He wants to have a relationship with us. But there needed to be something that took place before we could have this relationship. And that was our sacrifice. These were the symbols that were supposed to lead us to something deeper, a real relationship between me and God. But that didn't happen. So the reason why he turned the tables over is because when he went back to the temple, he saw in the outer court. Now I need to explain this about the outer court. You have this big table. Do I have it? You have the outer court is on the outside of this where you see people. That's where the money changers were. This was the court, was called the court of the Gentiles. Now this is how crazy this was. That on that border door that you see, there was signs all around those borders that said any non-Jew that enters in past this point, you have taken your life into your own hands because you will die. The judgment for you passing these doors is death. Because they felt that only Jews were allowed to go into the temple. Only Jews were allowed to enter in close enough to God. And then they had another court for women, which separated women, and then another one for men, and then another one for the priests. See, the Jewish people in this temple, it separated people because they wanted all the power to themselves. And if you were not a Jew, and you did not convert to Judaism, even if you did convert to Judaism, if you weren't born a Jew, you were still subject to these laws. These are foul flowers or leaves on a tree, but God was not there. There was no fruit of God. You were not presenting Christ or God to anyone when it came to the temple. And then you saw them, they were money changers, and they were selling. They were price gouging. It's okay for you to make a profit so that you can live, but so that you can exponentiate the cost so that you can make money off of people that you don't like. That's wrong. Understand what I'm trying to say, that the temple was designed for one specific thing. That was to bring me closer to God. What I needed to do to become a child of God and how to have a relationship with God. But yet Jesus called it the den of thieves. The den of thieves, a den of thieves is not where you go to steal and rob. A den of thieves is a place where thieves go to rest, to hide, and plot for what's coming next. So he's calling the temple a place where people go to conjure up what else they can do. And then after they've done all they do, they go in, they make a sacrifice, take a shower, cleanse themselves so they can go back out and do it again. And then after they get finished doing it again, their conscience may get a hold, they'll come back to the temple. And they were using this just like it was a thing to do.